So there's a lot of people that will lose money from not having economic common sense, but certainly it's a chance for the average person to participate in economics and see it transparently play out on a blockchain where everybody can watch the results.
You're listening to the Business, Life, and Coffee Show, where business leaders and health experts give insight while you take a break from the daily grind. Your host, Joey Price, is an entrepreneur with over a decade of startup experience and CEO of the managed HR services firm Jumpstart HR. Want to join the conversation or have an idea for the show? Tweet us at BizLifeCoffee or Joey directly at JoeyVPriceHR with the hashtag BLCMoments. Want more episodes? Head on over to iTunes to subscribe. Business, Life, and Coffee, personal development for busy professionals. Now let's get to the show.
WTF is BTC. These days on the news, you're hearing a whole lot about cryptocurrency, Bitcoin, and blockchain. But what do all of these things mean? And how are they directly impacting your business and your financial outlook? Well, I'm joined today with Stan Larimer, who is the president and CEO of Cryptonomex, a leading custom blockchain development company, as well as father to Daniel Larimer, arguably the finest programmer and visionary in the blockchain industry. Stan, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Hey, well, let's dive in. What is cryptocurrency? Why is that the topic of conversation these days?
Well, I guess the reason it's sad is because right now we're in a massive expansion of people's awareness of it because of it going up in value. Bitcoin is the leader of this. You could call it the Bitcoin industry, even though there's 1,000 or more different digital currencies by hundreds of different companies. But Bitcoin is having a real run right now. It's gone up in the past month from under $5,000 to almost approaching $20,000. So that's incredible growth rate. It's also, at this point, a classic behavior of Bitcoin. It's had run-ups like this in the past, and there's always corrections afterwards back to maybe half of that. So I think we are in the blow-off top of the current growth rate, but it's exciting because every time Bitcoin has a new peak, it's a lot higher than the last peak.
Well, hey, Stan, could you tell our listener what it is, your background in cryptocurrency, and how did you get to the point where you are today?
Bitcoin came out in 2009. A gentleman or a pseudonym of Satoshi Nakamoto introduced it, stayed around, advocated it, taught a lot of people about it, and then mysteriously disappeared around 2010 sometime. My son, Dan Larimer, at that time, was conversing with him a little bit as just a junior learner while Satoshi was the grand master. But fast forward a few years, and Dan had made some advancements of his own, got some investment money in 2013 from some Chinese investors, and set out to build something much more ambitious. Now, Bitcoin sits on something called a blockchain, which is just a decentralized ledger spread out all over the world, so a bunch of honest robots are tracking who owns what instead of a central bank. And so that's the big thing, call to fame for any digital currency, is being decentralized so nobody controls it. And Dan came along and said, with that technology, why don't I put a whole company on the blockchain? And so he put a smart coin factory and digital currency exchange on there instead of just something that keeps track of one coin.
Wow, so he's involved in a whole host of different cryptocurrencies.
Yes, he did that one. That one I just described is called BitShares. That was his first one. And, it's still growing, doing great. It now processes more transactions than Bitcoin or Ethereum, two of the other current leaders. And so it's right up there in the categories of important blockchain systems. He went on to make Steemit, which is a completely different type of a system where people get paid in digital currencies for publishing on a social media blogging platform. And he finished that up, and now it's actually number one in terms of blockchain activity in the world. And between BitShares and BitShares and Steemit, those two process more than the rest of the industry combined. So they're significant change. He's moved on now to one called EOS, which is an operating system for building blockchains. And so that will provide unlimited capacity and flexibility to create your own blockchain systems building on top of his operating system.
You're listening to Stan Larimer, and he has 40 years experience in software, hardware, and systems engineering, program management, business development, and he even taught rocket science at the U.S. Air Force Academy. Now, you mentioned the word blockchain, and I know that Bitcoin and a lot of the cryptocurrencies are based on this principle of blockchain. Is blockchain merely a financial, does it have use primarily in financial industry, or is this something that could be used across other different types of industries?
Oh, all kinds of applications. The list is very long, but just to show you the spectrum, I mentioned Steemit. That's something that's not financial. It's a social media, do blogging and earn money from posting interesting content. Another application is probably keep track of their votes on the blockchain and know that they were all counted up correctly and no hanging chads or anything like that. Anything that requires a decentralized, trustless system, right? Anytime there's a case that's something where somebody might cheat or so on, you eliminate that by putting it on the blockchain, where it decentralizes to a whole bunch of computers all over the world. I call them robots, but they're just computers spread out. Some of them in some people's basements, and some of them in the cloud. But those basically publish an unchangeable log of events that have happened. And so you could use that for a provably fair gambling or gaming type environment. And Peer Plays actually is a blockchain using our technology that is doing that. So just about anything you can imagine like that, there's some really cool ideas.
So Stan, just how safe is blockchain? And do you ever fear that someone nefarious could come in and disrupt the whole system, steal people's coins? Is it safer than our current way of banking?
Well, now that's an interesting question. How safe is our current way of banking? Look at what happened in Cyprus a few years back, where the government got in trouble there, and the banks got in trouble there, and they decided to steal. They call it a bail-in, but they stole depositors' deposits. I think they gave everybody a 40 or 50% haircut to bail out the bank. And since that time, European and American lawmakers have said, yeah, that's our standard thing. No more bailouts. If a bank loses money, it's allowed to steal it from its depositors. So while they say that there's an FDIC insured kind of a thing, they got this little backdoor that says if we gamble with your money and we make profit, you can, we're keeping the profit we made with your money, and we'll pay you 0.5% interest. If we lose, though, we get to take some of your money to make up for our losses. That's written into law now. It's outrageous. So part of the reason for the digital currency movement is to get that control outside of unreliable banks and dishonest governments and allow people to have control of their money again. Now, that's the positive side. The negative side is there are would love to get at your money. Generally, blockchain is absolutely secure. Huge. I mean, it's like hiding your money on one of the grains of sand in the entire universe. The chances of someone else finding the address of that grain of sand and taking your money are very small, infinitesimal. But if you leave the address of that grain of sand laying around on your computer, they can hack your computer and take it. But, what are the chances that a given hacker is going to draw his attention to your computer as an average individual? There's not much. Most individuals don't have much wealth stored on that grain of sand, so the hacker's not going to waste his time on you. But if you move your assets to a central exchange where they put them all in one wallet, and lets you trade on their exchange, that's one grain of sand that's worth finding. And so hackers can do all kinds of things to see if they can track down, or probably by talking to some employee of that exchange, or it's impossible to just guess the grain of sand address, but there's still ways that they can find it left around on the server of the company or something, and then run off with everybody's money. So your stuff is very safe, except when you trust somebody else to manage it, and then it's only as good as their security.
Yeah, and Stan, you mentioned the whole banking industry and the money that they make. There was an astounding statistic that I found recently that banks made over $33 billion on overdraft fees. And it just makes you realize that banks can often profit off of the poorest of people who don't have the funds. But I would imagine that blockchain is an investment vehicle, or a vehicle in general, that wouldn't have those types of fees or wouldn't have that type of financial incentive, and so it could be better for more people to utilize.
Yeah, let's compare three different cases. Okay, a typical bank, if you want to wire money somewhere, is going to take 3 days, charge you $30, and basically let sit on your money, use your money while they hold it for those 3 days, pretending that they have to check you out or some other excuse, but they're just really delaying it while they can use your money on the float. If you go to Bitcoin, the granddaddy of them all, the most famous ones, it's so loaded now with people using it that it's actually slowed down to where, it might take 3 hours and cost you $3. That's still a lot better than the banks, but it's not as good as you could do with BitShares, which was designed to completely replace the banking system, not just to be a currency. And with BitShares, it would be guaranteed 3 seconds and maybe cost you 3 cents. So that's sort of the comparative service you've got. And of course, nobody in the middle. I can send somebody on the other side of the planet money to buy a snow cone for 3 cents. It gets there in 3 seconds, and no middleman could stop it. Whereas if I try to do something like that with one of these other services, it's going to slow down my economic transactions. So we like to say it's frictionless when you use BitShares, and the friction increases as you go to Bitcoin or to the legacy banking system.
Yeah, and the implications of that are extremely huge. I'm thinking of, individuals that send money to their families overseas, or individuals that support causes or charities that are overseas, and being able to transfer that money in seconds for a lower cost can allow you to send more money, and more of that money be sent to the end user as opposed to being eaten up by fees.
Yeah, you just bypass all the middlemen and put it right there. And I've done it many times. It's really exhilarating. Yeah. I'm talking to somebody I want to do a deal with, and they say, yeah, okay, I'll do that for you for, I don't know, let's say $1,000. And I say, okay, you want me to send it to you by a check? You'll get it in 3 to 5 business days, or do you take BitShares? They say, I'll take BitShares. And I say, tap, 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 boom. And 3 seconds later, they say, I see, I got it in my wallet. Okay, deal done.
Nice.
That is super exciting.
Again, you're listening to Stan Larimer, who's the CEO of Cryptonomex. Stan, how do you get from rocket science to blockchain? What was the transitional moment for you?
Well, I've been working in the aerospace industry all my life, working on unmanned air, ground, sea, and space vehicles. That's Mars rovers and airplanes, unmanned, drones, you might say, that you can shoot out of a 5-inch Navy gun, or helicopters that you can carry in a Marine's backpack. So I worked on a lot of different interesting unmanned systems like that. Then back in 2010, I decided to get out and just do some entrepreneurial stuff. And then a couple years after that, Dan had his opportunity and wanted to focus on the technical stuff. So he asked me to come out of retirement and run the company for him. And so that's what I started doing. That's how we got to Cryptonomex as one of the early, well-known digital currency companies. And since then, we've continued to spin off different companies. One of the latest ones is Hyperion, which is bringing in some really high-powered, well-connected people to start building on top of the BitShares blockchain. And man, since we started doing that, there are so many new opportunities that you'll be hearing about even in the months of December and January. I'm super excited about the utilization increase of the BitShares blockchain just in the past couple months.
Well, Stan, we'll be following your story very closely. I've got a few questions. Obviously, Bitcoin, cryptocurrency, all these things are fascinating. So I asked my listeners if they had any questions. So if you don't mind, for the next couple of minutes, I'll just do some listener questions. Is that all right?
Yeah, great.
All right, great. So the first one that I have is it's from Megan. What other types of cryptocurrency do you think could be up and coming, i.e. things to invest in now, or is Bitcoin the dominant cryptocurrency?
Well, it along one axis, if you're just saying, what is the market cap, Bitcoin is a clear big gorilla with a market cap over 200 billion. But it's limited. It really can't grow in utility because it's saturated in how much work it can do. Whereas if you look at something like BitShares, it's got a market cap of less than 1%, and yet it's handling more transactions for the world and has more growth potential than Bitcoin. So if you were an investor, what would make sense? Buy into something that's already in a parabolic climb to near $20,000 a piece, or would you take something that's worth 15 cents right now that is probably going to do the same thing? We never know the future, but just compare the raw difference in power and performance. And so, yeah, I'm a real believer. I don't own any Bitcoin right now. I own all BitShares, but that's just me. I'm not a financial advisor. But that's the kind of question. And then there's another really exciting thing that's coming out, which is basically new coins being released all the time that are backed by something. Now, Bitcoin and BitShares are backed by the demand for their products and services, and so they have real value too, just like Microsoft stock is backed by everything Microsoft does, and Google's backed by everything Google does. So to say that digital currencies are not backed by anything wouldn't be true, but a whole lot of people now are coming out and offering every kind of thing you could imagine. Some of them are securities, and they represent investments in banks and other things, but there's also just interesting utility tokens out there that might go up in value because as a company starts growing, more people want a limited supply of those tokens. And so it's a little bit of a wild west right now. Some of those tokens are scams or, at least not backed by anything other than a couple kids sitting in their parents' basement. But if you go to sources that are, doing the regulatory compliance that's necessary, and basically putting a big, good, solid company behind it, we're going to be introducing an awful lot of that kind of stuff in the coming few months, and we're dealing only with things that we have confidence have high quality. Of course, each of those things you have to do your own homework and due diligence and read the white paper that explains the nature of the investment. But we're going to do our darn best to make sure that we don't have anything we're recommending that can't pass the legality test and the good common business sense test. But huge opportunities for that kind of stuff. It's a great time to be doing it, but don't follow the herd and buy Bitcoin because it's the one you've heard of. Okay, look at the plot of its growth. It's grown by a factor of 10 this year. BitShares have grown by a factor of 50 because a small cap stock like BitShares, it's not a stock, but it's a small cap coin, has more room to grow, let's say, than one that's grown a whole lot.
Yeah. All right. That's a great answer, and I'm definitely going to be following your news and notes. By the way, how can people follow your company, your blog, your social media? What are some links that people can connect with while they're listening to us on the podcast?
Well, you can go to billionherocampaign.com, and that's where we're making a game out of learning about all this stuff. And so we're also giving away $1 billion worth of BitShares as soon as we do what Bitcoin has already done, which is grow by a factor of 1,000. We put aside $1 million worth of BitShares, and we're basically throwing down the challenge that we think we're going to grow in the next couple of years as much as Bitcoin has grown in the past, and then some. So we teach people about that, and you get to vote on what are the projects that we should give the $1 billion away. So you can learn, have fun. We'll teach you some games, and then what you learn can be applied for your own financial prosperity.
That's incredible. And this question might be answered by what you just said, but what is the best way for someone with limited knowledge on investing in cryptocurrency to actually begin in the cryptocurrency landscape?
Well, there's a lot of things that are possible. What we do is we created this billionherocampaign.com as a place is our way of putting in good training materials and good suggestions and helping people get an account and so on. You can go to BitShares.org, which is a more static informational site, but it gives you a place where you can actually get a BitShares account set up. And then there are other communities that you can join. BitSharesTalk.org is a place where community members get together and talk. So a number of places like that. There's no substitute for joining a community where they can give you some help. You just post in the community, hey, anybody, can you tell me where I can go get some more information on this? And usually someone will post you a link or two on the subject you're interested in or directly answer your question. That's the way in the digital currency industry we all help each other to learn.
All right, my next question is from Megan. And Megan, well, this is another Megan, but she asks it's a two-part question. Do you believe that Bitcoin is a bubble or experiencing a bubble? And then the why or why not to explain the fundamentals behind its rise.
Yes, it is absolutely in a bubble. I will scream that from the mountaintops. I've seen this happen many times, okay? It's going up. I can't predict how much higher it's going to go. I'm shocked it's gone as high as it has, but it's generally being driven by increasing awareness of the public and increasing legitimacy of it, as some of the major people who have in the past been critical of the dollar but advocating precious metal, some suddenly starting to accept Bitcoin. And therefore, it's entering the mainstream. But at the same time, I don't think it's a particularly good investment right now. It certainly was if you bought it at the beginning of this year. And if you're willing to hold it another year, it'll probably double again. But in the meantime, you're going to have a shocking roller coaster. And there's going to be some real shocks to the industry coming up in terms of, sudden announcements by government regulators that they've closed an exchange for misbehavior or something. And so, anytime something like that happens, or a hacker hacks into a central exchange and runs off with that exchange's supply, shocks everybody and causes, a pinprick to pop the bubble. It's something that it's definitely recommend the industry getting into it. But anytime you see something that has had a recent large run-up, that's not a good thing to buy into because it's going to correct. It's better to look for quality. And I would right now recommend people looking for some of the top quality ICOs. I certainly believe BitShares is not in any kind of a bubble. It's probably the most undervalued thing. Imagine it's less than 1% of the market cap of BitShares, and yet of Bitcoin, and yet it is handling more transactions per day than Bitcoin, and the second one. So, and then of course Ethereum has just had this horrible experience. Somebody invented a cute little kitty cat game that it's gotten real popular, and it clogged up Ethereum and basically stopped its transactions because Ethereum can only offer maybe 25 transactions per second for the whole world to share, and the little kitty cat program came along and used up most of them. Whereas BitShares is scalable to tens of thousands of transactions per second. So it's to me, the heir apparent. And so do your homework. Don't just trust me, but look at the difference. A great place to go to is blocktivity.info, blocktivity.info, shows the rankings of all the major blockchains in terms of how much they're used. To me, that's much better information than looking at coinmarketcap.com, which ranks them by what's their market cap. And all that tells you is how big is the bubble that something's in right now. Where Blocktivity says how much are the different things being used. So that's what I'd recommend, blocktivity.info.
All right. Again, we are joined by Stan Larimer. And Stan, this has been very insightful. You're just a wealth of knowledge here on this cryptocurrency conversation. And I know our listeners are going to appreciate this. I'll ask you one more question because I want to respect your time here. Let's see. Let's pick a good one. Stephen asks, has the development of cryptocurrency changed our understanding of economics? Also, if a government decided to create a cryptocurrency, what would distinguish it from being simply a larger denomination of the existing currency?
I'm going to answer the second part first. It's so funny. It's absolutely laughable when all the big banks and governments of the world say, we're going to do the blockchain too, except we want to control all the nodes because we're the government or we're the big bank. We don't want it to be publicly controlled. Guess what? The whole reason for the blockchain is to decentralize things so there's no central authority that can seize your funds or delay your transactions or so on. So these banks that say we're getting into this, or these big companies that say we're going to do it, hey, if you are not willing to make the thing publicly controlled and release control of it, blockchain is not needed. You can use an ordinary database and store the numbers in there where you can fiddle with them yourself. The idea of controlling that is ridiculous, but of course, I'm sure a whole lot of big businesses are still going to try to pull that off because the public may not know the difference. Yeah. So that was the first half. And remind me the second half. What was the first half question?
The first one is, has the development of cryptocurrency changed our understanding of economics?
Oh, I think so, at least broadened it. In fact, Cryptonomex is kind of named after crypto economics. And one of the things we specialize in is advanced economic theory of blockchains. We're making some really interesting financial products that can be done with smart contracts and programming those robots to implement nice, stable cryptocurrencies. And we've got one called the Hero that you can read about on sovereignhero.com that'll grow by programmatic robotic control by 5% annually. So you can structure all kinds of interesting things. And of course, there is a lot of economic ignorance out there. So a lot of people think that you can just create a new coin, give it a fancy name, and repeat Bitcoin's success. So there's a lot of people that will lose money from not having economic common sense. But certainly it's a chance for the average person to participate in economics and see it transparently play out on a blockchain where everybody can watch the results.
Well, listener, this has been Stan Larimer, an insightful conversation on Bitcoin, cryptocurrency, BitShares, Cryptonomex. His son, Daniel Larimer. Make sure you give everyone a follow and make sure that you visit the BitShares Hero website. Also visit the billionherocampaign.com. Stan, have we missed anything? Is there anything else that you want to cover today?
Just by all means, watch my blog on Steemit, steemit.com/@Stan. That's where I publish everything new, everything that's going on. And that way you can know about it first if you're reading about it there.
Awesome. We'll add that in the show notes. Thanks for joining me, Stan.
Okay, thank you.
If you've recently started a business, why take away time from what you're good at, only to focus on difficult, pesky HR problems? Jumpstart HR LLC offers a better solution. Jumpstart HR provides HR outsourcing support to U.S.-based small businesses and startups, and was recently ranked among the top 10 HR outsourcing firms in the country, according to BusinessNewsDaily.com. From recruitment to employee handbooks to legal compliance, Jumpstart HR helps you get peace of mind about the people in your business. Visit jumpstart-hr.com for more information or follow on Twitter at jumpstarthr. Jumpstart HR. Let's build a better business together.
Thanks for listening to the Business, Life, and Coffee Show with Joey Price. We hope you're inspired to become the best version of yourself after listening to our guest. What thought or idea stood out the most to you? Keep the conversation going by tweeting the show at BizLifeCoffee or our host at Joey V. Price HR with the hashtag BLC Moments. And if you like what you just heard, pass along our podcast to at least 5 people. Detailed show notes can be found at www.businesslifeandcoffee.com. And our full archive is available on iTunes, Podbean, Stitcher, and Google Play. This has been a Jumpstart HR production. Join us next time for another edition of the Business, Life, and Coffee Show.